Hi, I'm Chia, and welcome back to Life in Chapters. It's that time of the month again, and I wanted to do my June wrap up and go over the books that I read in June. I did kind of go off my TBR a bit, and I only read 3 of the 7, but I'll be adding those 4 extra books to my July TBR, so it'll be read either way. The first book I read was Say You Swear by Megan Brady, and it follows a girl named Ariana and her twin brother and their 3 best friends who go to a beach house that their family owns every single summer. And this book is Wattpad at its finest. So we follow Ariana and her twin brother and their best friends, and they go to this beach house that they go to every single year since they were kids. And she has had a huge crush on her brother's best friend since they were kids, and his name is Chase. During the summer, they just graduated high school, and their parents actually all collectively gifted them all a beach house for their high school graduation. After the summer is done, they're all set to attend the same college together, and she's gonna room with her girl best friend, and the boys are gonna be a part of the football team in their college. After something that happens over the summertime, she ends up believing that Chase and her will never happen, and she ends up meeting a guy named Noah during one of the beach events that they have, and she ends up having like a flirtation with him, and they end up finding out that he's also a part of the football team in their same college. This book is literally every single trope that you can imagine smashed into one book. Like I said, it's Wattpad at its finest. They're all in the same college together, and the boys are part of the football team, and then the girls are really close to the guys because they've grown up together. I feel so bad for one of the characters at the end because this person has so much trauma dumped onto them. Imagine all the traumas you could possibly think of and dumped them into one book. And the dialogue is so cringe between these characters that literally no one talks like this in real life, but who knows, you know? So I give this book a 3 stars because, in all honesty, it kept me entertained. Things that happen that it's like a train wreck. It's something that I just couldn't stop reading because I just wanted to see what happens at the end. And the whole entire time I literally was thinking, what is going on right now? And I don't know if I could recommend this book, but if you love Wattpad stories, I say give this a go. The next books I read were part of the same series, which is the Kindreds Saga. It's Spark of the Everflame and Heat of the Everflame. If you want to know more about it, I did do a full reading vlog on my channel that's already up. So if you want a full opinion about the first 2 books and whether I'm going to continue the series, please check that out below, and I'll link it in the description as well. But to give a quick explanation of it, these first 2 books follow a girl named DM who lives in the mortal city, and she lives in a world with half-god people. It's because of that division between the two and the stark differences because of they're rich, they're powerful, and also how strong they all are. And so there's big tension, and her mom, who is the big healer in the city, is a part of the healing center, ends up disappearing. And after her disappearance, all these secrets come out that her mom has been hiding. And because of these secrets, DM ends up having to interact with a lot of these descendants and ends up becoming sort of friends with them, and also maybe ends up falling for one of them as well. These books are so good, they're definitely binge worthy, and they are independently published. Overall, both of them are 4 stars for me, so I highly recommend if you want to binge a series, especially if you're going through a book hangover, so I highly recommend. The next book I read was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This is my first Marissa Meyer books. I heard that she's really good at fairy tale retellings, so I wanted to check this out. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. This story follows a girl named Catherine who's a part of a noble family, and she is a baker. And then her family attends a lot of balls, and she always bakes something for these balls. And one day she bakes this lemon tart, and the King of Hearts ends up loving this lemon tart and all her baked goods. And this attracts his interest, causing him to basically want to propose marriage to her. I know, because of baked goods, but anyways, during one of these balls that the king throws, she ends up running into a joker named Jess, who she ends up falling for. And her mom is pushing her to say yes to the king to marriage and everything, because this would set their whole entire family up for life. This is a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, and beloved Alice in Wonderland's characters show up in this book, and characters like the Mad Hatter and the Cheshire Cat and also the caterpillars show up as well. So I highly recommend this book if you want a different take on the Alice in Wonderland book, and I gave this book a 4 stars. The next book I read was Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is a book that is a part of the Shadowhunters world. Shadowhunters are part angel and part human, and they are meant to hunt demons who infiltrate into their world. These are the descendants of the people who of the characters from Infernal Devices. So I would suggest reading the Infernal Devices book before reading the Last Hour series, because this will spoil some stuff that happens in the Infernal Devices series. I read Infernal Devices series last year and I binged it and fell in love with it, and it's set in Victorian England, and I love anything from the Victorian or Regency era, and also combined with fantasy, it's one of my favorite things. So this book, it follows the characters, and there's been a good significant amount of time where demons have stopped showing up, and so the descendants of the characters from Infernal Devices have not had to actively attack any demons in a while, and all of a sudden all these demons show up out of nowhere, and they're running around trying to have to deal with it and have to use whatever training they've had to do this, even though they've never really actively fought demons before. I obviously can't really say anything too much about like the characters in this book because it will spoil some stuff that happens in the Infernal Devices book, but I absolutely love this. I gave this book a 5 stars. I loved Shadowhunters, and the fact that Cassandra Clare is still writing in this universe is amazing. So I will definitely keep on going with this series because I love this world so much. Okay, moving on. The next book that I read in June was Never Lie by Frida McFadden, and it's also available on Kindle Unlimited. This book follows a newlywed couple, Trisha and Ethan, and they are house hunting right now in upstate New York. And they go to a remote area in New York where they find this big house. When they get to this house, they unfortunately get stuck during a snowstorm. During this night, they end up realizing that this house used to be owned by a woman named Adrienne Hale, who was a famous therapist who ended up disappearing 3 years ago. She was very wealthy, and Trisha, who ends up going around the house to explore some things, ends up finding some tape recordings of Adrienne Hale's sessions with some of her patients. She ends up trying to see if any of these tapes can explain why Adrienne disappeared. Usually with Frida McFadden's books, there's a big twist at the end, and the twist at the end I did not end up seeing coming. There was a theory that I had throughout the whole entire book because I thought I guessed it right away, and I ended up being wrong completely, which I love. But once we got to the twist, I did end up guessing the ending. This book ended up being a 4 stars for me. I love Frida McFadden's writing. I've loved her writing since I read the Housemaid series on Kindle Unlimited as well, and she always has big twists in the ends, and her books are great for binging, especially if you're in the middle of a book slump. And then I decided to read it because I was in between books after I finished some of my books, and I didn't really want to read another fantasy, so I decided to binge one of her thrillers, and I highly recommend this one. So it's a 4 stars for me. And the last 2 books that I read in June is the Part of Your World series by Abby Jimenez. And these 2 books are interconnected standalone. And the first book is Part of Your World. The second book is Yours Truly. I decided to give Abby Jimenez a go because I heard her writing was amazing and I absolutely fell in love. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Part of Your World, and this one follows Alexis, and she's a doctor who works at one of Minnesota's top hospitals, and she works for the ER department over here. And she's coming home from her great aunt's funeral, ends up getting stuck on the side of the road somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and this handsome guy comes and tows her out of the ditch. Later on that night, she ends up going to this bar so that she can find some food, and she ends up running into the guy who helped get her towed out, and we end up finding out that his name is Daniel. He ends up taking her home and end up having a one-night stand, even though that wasn't their intention. And this goes on to examine their relationship and how they deal with it, because he's never really traveled to the big city before, and she's a big-time doctor, and she comes from a very rich background because her parents are both well-known surgeons as well. So they come from 2 different worlds. She ends up going down to keep visiting him at the town that she was at, and we examine their relationship and how it goes about and how these 2 different worlds ends up colliding. The next book I read that is a part of the series is called Yours Truly, and this one follows Alexis's best friend named Brianna, and she's also a doctor in the ER department. And there's a new doctor who starts and his name is Jacob. After a bad first impression between the two, they end up running into each other, like literally running into each other, and it was a bad interaction. He comes off rude, and not only that, the nurses complain to Brianna saying that he's been rude to them as well and they don't like him. So after basically kind of going off on him a little bit, he writes a letter to apologize to her, saying that he has social anxiety, doesn't understand the social cues sometimes, and she ends up feeling really bad because he fully apologizes for being rude and being standoffish. Absolutely love this book. I think it has great anxiety representation because I have anxiety also, and being in, oh, I forgot to say also that these two are dual POVs. It's from both characters who are the love interests. So this one is both POVs from Alexis and Daniel, and both POVs from Jacob and Brianna. Brianna has a brother who is unfortunately going through renal kidney failure and needs a kidney donor, and so she has a lot on her plate, of course. So it's the stress of that plus everything else that was going on in the hospital that might have come off as rude as well. And the thing that I realized that I love about these two books is the fact that Abby Jimenez writes really well in serious topics and serious conflicts that a lot of people go through every single day, and she knows how to handle it really well. And I like the fact that both of these external conflicts that came for the, you know how the third act conflict sometimes is miscommunication or like something that happens within the romance or within each person that it sometimes gets frustrating, but these ones have third act conflicts that have external things going on rather than internally. She handles it really well, and also from Jacob's perspective, when it's going through him going through anxiety about overthinking stuff, I can relate to him so well. I like the fact that each individual person in each of these books don't change themselves for the better for the other person. They change so that they can have a happier life, and they try to let go of past traumas. And I like how she handles these past traumas as well, because there's a lot of serious stuff that happens. She's becoming one of my favorite authors because of how she handles rom-coms. And these are, I believe, how rom-coms should be written. It should deal with serious topics and individual growth rather than going off and growing for the other person, but growing because they want to be happy rather than that. Absolutely, each of these books became 5-star reads for me. As soon as I got with them, they were so good. So absolutely 5 stars. So that was all the books that I read in June. If you want my full thoughts about these 3 books in this series, I will be posting a reading vlog about them next week. And I also read just for the summer in those reading vlogs, so check it out if you want to know my full thoughts about those books. Anyways, that was my June wrap up. Thank you for watching, and if you read any of these books, please let me know in the comments below or about your opinions or reactions to them as well. And thank you again for watching. Bye!